Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. We're presented by CLNS Media. Today on the show, we've got Cole Zwicker on to break down the recently released results of the NBA Draft Lottery. Cole, are you ready to just spit some fire takes off the top of the dome after no more than 25 minutes of this having happened?
Well, at least I can actually talk now. I don't even have a horse in the race, and I couldn't speak. It was so nerve-wracking during the when they were announcing the different picks and stuff. I have no idea what that atmosphere brings out in me, but it's like you kind of freeze. Yeah, no, it's a pretty wild event. So let's just kind of run down what ended up happening with these picks. So number one is going to be the Phoenix Suns. They had the highest odds going into the event. Number two is going to be the Sacramento Kings. Number three is the Atlanta Hawks. Memphis moved down 2 spots to number 4. Dallas moved down 2 spots to number 5. Orlando 6, Chicago 7, and then the rest of it went status quo. Cleveland 8, New York 9, Philadelphia from the Lakers 10, Charlotte 11, the Clippers at 12, the Clippers at 13, and Denver at 14. Oh boy. All right, so let's just kind of dive into this. What were your overall impressions of what we just saw? Like, did anything stand out beyond just the order? Not really. I mean, it was weird seeing Mike Schmitz on television. It was kind of unreal for some reason. I love Mike. Mike's great. It's surreal to see him on TV.
I know Mike. Like, we've gone out together before out here in LA. Like, he's as good a person as he purports himself to be online. He is a genuinely great dude. Like, I love that dude. He's one of my favorite people in the industry. So to see him on TV is amazing. Like, I love that so much for him. The rest of the production was scary to me in a lot of ways, given what it looks like ESPN's draft night is going to look like. I would hope that they let John and Mike do what they're very, very good at, and just kind of let them be them instead of trying to put them into the ESPN kind of bubble that tends to happen with some people.
Very hard to agree with that. I mean, I kind of tuned out most of the analysis because I was having Twitter conversations, and it's just too damn long. I mean, an hour-long program this year was just, the lottery's too long. I couldn't function. It was the build-up was ridiculous. Like, having the commercial between like picks 10 through 14 and 4 through 9 was just, it was pretty surreal. But I do like the ESPN's coverage for the most part. Now they got some really smart guys in there, like including Gavoni and Schmitz for sure. They got to have a bigger platforms, I think, just to talk about specifics of the draft. Because, I mean, for me, obviously we cover the draft intently, so we're more familiar with the prospects. But beyond surface level stuff, those guys are really going to bring like what the bridge has been for ESPN for years, as far as just being overly surface level at times and just getting more into the intricate analysis.
Yeah, and those guys are great at that, particularly. So I would hope that they just kind of let it roll on draft night, but we'll see. Let's talk more about the order now. Let's start with Phoenix. I think that this was the way to create the most drama for the number 1 overall pick, because the Phoenix Suns obviously are going to be pulled in 2 different directions here. So they just hired Igor Kokoskov, who was the Slovenian national coach last summer when Slovenia won the Eurobasket with Goran Dragic and Luka Doncic. The Phoenix Suns also throughout the year have really scouted Luka Doncic. Like, they have done their homework on him, and they are fans of him, from what I've been told. They also really like DeAndre Ayton. DeAndre Ayton went to Arizona. DeAndre Ayton, I think, is the safest prospect in this class. He has the highest upside in this class due to being 7'1", 260 pounds, and the biggest just physical athletic freak that I can remember entering the NBA in the last decade. There are also obviously the Arizona ties to the Phoenix area that are going to make this a little bit interesting as well. If I was them, I would take DeAndre Ayton. I think he's a perfect complement to Devin Booker. I think that he's a good complement to Josh Jackson. If you believe that he can step away and shoot at some point, he's the kind of center that you need to pair with a Josh Jackson. If you're as worried as I am about Josh Jackson's jump shot long term, I would take him. Where do you stand at this early stage of the process?
Oh, I would 100% take Luka Doncic at that spot. I think that what they need as far as their franchise trajectory is a guy at the helm that can initiate your offense, pass at a high level, create off the bounce. I think Luka is actually the safest guy in the class to me, just because he's a playmaking wing, but he's also like an initiator type. And he, I believe in the shot as far as mechanics. I know it hasn't really translated to three yet overseas, but he's the smartest player in the class to me. And I think that mentality, that approach is going to resonate with a lot of other Suns players. Like, they don't really have that guy who's like a really high level decision maker. Devin Booker's a great scorer. He's made definitive strides as far as passing on the move. And I like him as a prospect. I like him as a young player. I think he's definitely a foundational piece, but they just don't have the it guy. And Ayton's a center. I mean, I don't know how much you can really dictate the trajectory of a franchise in the modern game if you are the kind of center that Ayton is. I still think he's a great prospect, but in this spot, given what the Phoenix Suns know about Doncic as well, like, this is another underplaying current here, is if they pass on Luka, it could be because they just view Ayton as a better prospect. But if they pass on Luka, it might make me skeptical on, is there something we're missing with Luka? Because they're going to have the best intel probably of any team with the familiarity of the coach now. But I guess just to summarize and answer your question succinctly, I would easily go Luka Doncic here for a plethora of reasons. Yeah,
I wouldn't be super worried about it if they pass on Doncic, to be honest. Obviously, they are going to have the one-on-one connection. They're going to have a great amount of intel on Doncic just from having Kokoskov there. I will say, if the Kings would pass on Luka at number 2, that's where I would start raising the red flags, because not even the red flags, because that's a loaded term when it comes to NBA draft communication. But that's where I would start to wonder a little bit more, is if the Kings pass on him, because the Kings obviously scout overseas quite a bit. They have Vlade Divac, who is also Serbian. Luka Doncic's father is Serbian. These guys have known each other for a long time. It's not going to be hard for the Kings to get intel on Luka Doncic. So that's where I would be worried. If the Suns pass on him at 1, I wouldn't really think anything of it. I would just think that, okay, like, the Suns owner, like, is from Tucson. He's super connected with the Arizona program. Why wouldn't they take DeAndre Ayton? You know what I mean? Like, I think there's that, and I think there's the fact that DeAndre Ayton just looks the part, too. You know what I mean? Like, in a significant way.
Sure. I think that's definitely fair. And I'm probably letting my own evaluation cloud my opinion on how things proceed. Like, I think Luka's clearly the better prospect than Ayton as far as being a perimeter creator in the modern game. I just think that's more valuable.
Well, here's what we'll say, though. Before you get into this, before you would do that, I'm going to give you the space to give your Luka Doncic evaluation, because I think it's worthwhile. You kind of went into it a little bit during that last blurb, but go a little bit more in depth on Luka and tell me why in this day and age you strongly believe that he should be the number 1 overall pick.
We see the value of perimeter shot creators and creators for others who are, between 6'6" and 6'8". Those are reflected in the playoffs. Like guys like Jason Tatum, who can create for himself and play both sides of the floor as a smart team defender, has the physical dimensions via strength. I mean, he's a better athlete than Luka Doncic, of course, but that kind of player in the modern game as like not necessarily like a hard floor, but around a floor, and then having an initiator of your offense as a ceiling. How many guys 6'8" do you have to chase over the top of screens and pick and roll? They're like 2 maybe. I don't even think there are. Like, we haven't seen a prospect like this. It's hard to give context because Luka's not like anybody we have in the league right now. Like, he moves more like Joe Johnson as far as how he's a better ball handler, a better passer, but just how he moves, how he's built. But his IQ is off the charts. So like his comparables are like, of course he's not LeBron James, but a guy of that size who can initiate your offense and play make for others is just very rare. Giannis is another guy, Simmons. All of these guys are better athletes, but Luka's a better shooter. And I think that's the key with him, is he can shoot, pass, and dribble in the modern game. If you have a guy that's 6'8" who can do all 3 of those things, I don't know how you fail at his level of intelligence. I think his team defense is underrated as far as IQ. He's strong. So for me, that's really what, like a summarized form, that's what it boils down to for me, is perimeter players who can shoot, pass, and dribble in the modern game. That's where the money is. And if you can get a guy who can, again, make high-level decisions, quick decisions with the ball, anticipatory passing, Luka can do all of that. And I think that for a franchise, getting that guy who is versatile, can play both on and off the ball, doesn't need the ball, he can be dynamite off the ball. As like a quick decision maker, as attacking closeouts guy, as a shooter, there's just a lot of potential there that's not just, is he a high-level athlete? There's much more to Luka and to his impact than just raw explosiveness. And I do think he can get a little bit more athletic. Not considerably, but I think if he works with like P3, he can maybe add a little bit of pop to his game. And all he needs is a little bit more, in my opinion, to reach the level that I think he can. So I'm definitely really high on him overall, clearly. And I just think, again, that the perimeter playmaking in the modern game, you have to have that if you want to compete.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on having the shoot, pass, and like handle skills. Those are incredibly valuable. You mentioned the idea of Luka Doncic potentially getting more athletic at P3. He's at the right agency to do that because Bill Duffy, is someone that is connected there. He can hook him up there, get him there. But the things that I always look for out of lead ball handlers, and this is something that you and I talked about when we talked about Trae Young, and the first thing that I look for, the two things that I look for more than the others now, are the ability to create separation and the ability to shoot off the dribble. And Luka Doncic can shoot off the dribble. I'm not particularly worried about that, even though his percentages make him look a little bit lower than he is as a shooter, as you mentioned. Where I am a little bit worried is the ability to gain separation. He does have the great change of pace dribble. He does have great change of direction. He has really good hips whenever he has the ball in his hand. It allows him to create with ease. Against European level players, though, I'll be interested to see how he performs against longer, more athletic defenders, because he'll see those guys night in, night out. Now, if he played in Phoenix, there is the factor that he'd essentially be starting with two other guys that are 6'6" and 6'7" in Devin Booker and Josh Jackson, so he'll get smaller defenders on him most of the time. And I think that would be a huge benefit to his game. And that makes me think that this should be a little bit more of a conversation, because that's the way that you find mismatches in today's NBA, is with, having the height and skills to where you have the size on the floor, but you don't have, or you do also have the skill level on the floor. The bigger teams that are more skilled are going to be the more successful, as we've seen with Golden State. It just creates so many mismatches on the floor. I still need to see him get separation, and I still need to talk to people overseas about what they saw whenever he went up against longer defenders, because the games against Panathinaikos scared me, I'll be honest. Like, watching him try and deal with Thanasis Antetokounmpo was a problem to me.
Yeah, I like the point about the size. That's the point I've tried to harp on over time, as far as there's usually a trade-off when you play a smaller player like a Trae Young, a Stephen Curry. That kind of point guard at 6'2", 6'3" is going to get hunted in the playoffs. If you can get your initiation, or at least part initiation, by a 6'8" guy, you're not incurring that same trade-off as far as size. So for Phoenix, they could play both Luka with Devin Booker, they can play him with Josh Jackson, and just be ultra versatile, and they're not sacrificing any kind of size. Like, it's at the 16th pick in the draft. They could take like a DeAnthony Melton, a bigger guard. They could take a Zaire Smith, who's 6'5", bigger guard, and they don't have to incur that trade-off as well. So I think that's a big part in this. As for the creating separation, I do think that's a point. I mean, he's not a dynamic athlete as far as changing direction, is like being explosive in and out of his moves, but I do think he has an elite handle. He's great at using his body as far as keeping guys at bay, because he's really, really strong, and he's ultra good in pick and roll. Like, I do think maybe against like Kawhi Leonard or something, if a team has multiple wing athletes that can just switch everything and really force him to play isolation, I'm with you. Even though he does have the threat of a shot as a pull-up and he has a great handle, that's going to give him some problems. But as far as in conventional sets, if you can put that guy in pick and roll, he can make every read on the floor. He can see the entire court. He can shoot off the dribble. He can keep guys in jail. I think his ability to maintain a live dribble in the paint, as far as keeping guys on his back, is going to be super valuable, because that's going to suck the defense, and you can make reads out of that set. So I think there's probably a little bit more creation upside to his game that he gets credit for a lot of the reasons as far as athletic deficiencies. But I do get concerned about creating separation consistently.
Yeah, and let's talk about team needs real quick for Phoenix. Phoenix, more than anything, almost needs just defenders, right? Like, I mean, they're one of the worst defensive teams in the league this year. I don't really think Luka Doncic or DeAndre Ayton is going to immediately change your game defensively. Like, we can talk about Luka Doncic being a good team defender. He's not going to be a difference-making defensive player in the NBA. Like, you would agree with me there, right?
Yes, correct.
I would say that I think DeAndre has a higher defensive ceiling, and just by nature of playing the center position has potential to make a higher defensive impact for Phoenix as well, just given the way that he can really move his feet on the perimeter in today's day and age.
I think under that rationale, I would agree. But also, if you are playing DeAndre as your center, there's an opportunity cost trade-off there because there are better defensive centers available. So he could do more damage to your team as well by playing the center position.
No question.
Yes, usually centers do bring more defensive value than like an ultra-switchable wing who can really guard both on and off ball. 1 through 4, 1 through 5. Like we talked about the last podcast, but like a Kawhi Leonard being a rarity as far as wing defenders. But I think from where you're approaching this, I agree with you.
Yeah, so I would consider that factor if I was looking at DeAndre Ayton at number 1 as well. The rest of this, I mean, who knows? We'll see what Phoenix does. I'll learn a little bit more when I get to Chicago tomorrow for the NBA Draft Combine. Before we move on, though, I have a quick word from one of our great advertisers here. It's one that's near and dear to my heart. Simple Contacts is the most convenient way to renew your contact lens prescription and reorder your brand of contacts from anywhere in minutes. It is vision care for the 21st century. If you need to renew your prescription, all you have to do is take a 5-minute vision test from your phone or computer. It's reviewed by a licensed doctor. You receive a renewed prescription and reorder your contacts. All you need is your current contacts, an internet connection, and 10 feet of space. Have an expired RX? Just upload a photo or your doctor's information and order your lenses. Why would you use Simple Contacts? It's convenient, it's fast, it's reliable, it offers choice. It is a 5-star experience. It's great for summer, and it saves you money because the vision test only costs you $20 compared to whenever you go for an appointment without insurance is going to cost you over $200. The contact lens prices are also unbeatable. The shipping is free. And best of all, we're offering a promotion to our listeners. And look, as I talked about on the Monday podcast, this is something that I just went through last week with Simple Contacts. It is absolutely fantastic. The vision test is so simple. The way you order contacts is so easy. If you have contacts on you, all you have to do is scan the barcode. You don't even really have to type in any information and make it difficult. It is so fantastic, and it is such a time and money saver compared to whenever you go visit an office. I have a code, though, for you. You will get $30 off of your Simple Contacts order whenever you enter simplecontacts.com/game theory or enter game theory at checkout. That's GAMETHEORY. Simplecontacts.com/game theory or enter that game theory code at checkout. Look, this isn't a replacement for your periodic full eye exam. They only test that your current prescription still helps you see 20/20 and renew that prescription. They're not rewriting completely new RXs or examining eye health, seeing if you have glaucoma or anything like that. But if you just need to renew your contacts, Simple Contacts is the easiest way for you to do it. And I can't emphasize enough, this is something you should absolutely do. Let's talk about Sacramento. How about Sacramento finally moving up in the NBA, in the lottery? Like this is great. They needed something like this.
De'Aaron Fox's charm, man. That guy's irresistible.
Yeah, how about this? De'Aaron Fox goes on the Ringer today, does a ladybird thing, and everyone loves him, and now he's winning lottery picks for the Kings. It is that charm. It's that just natural charisma that De'Aaron possesses that Vivek knew and loved when he selected him.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously great for their fans. I mean, that's the thing that stands out is, of course, you pull for Sacramento fans. It's in vogue to kind of criticize the franchise about past player development especially, but happy for the fans here.
So Luka Doncic, I think, would be the natural pick at number 2. I think DeAndre Ayton would be the natural pick at number 2 for them. How do we like both of their fits with what the Kings have assembled in terms of how they value their assets? How you and I value their assets, I think, might be a little bit different than how they value their assets. So, like, I don't think you and I would say that either De'Aaron Fox or Buddy Hield are, like, game-breaking talents. I really like Buddy. I like the steps that he took, especially later in the year this year. I like De'Aaron Fox. I think he's going to be a solid NBA starter. I really like Bogdan Bogdanović. I thought that he showed a ton this year as a potential playmaker for Sacramento. That makes it kind of a weird fit for Doncic. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, But I'm also, I guess we have to view this, like you said, the context is via what they think they have. I think they view Fox as their point guard / initiator of the future, obviously. And I think Luka brings some equity there. I think you have to use Luka on the ball as well as off the ball. But I do think he fits well enough off the ball that he could still thrive. It's still, like, if Ayton goes 1, I don't think they're going to hesitate to draft Luka, even though, like, the fit isn't ideal because, in theory, Fox needs the ball because he's not going to be much of a gravity threat off with the shooting. But he did show more strides shooting this year, and they did play him at 2 guard a little bit. So I think they would be fine taking Luka. I don't think there's fit concerns really with either one of these two guys.
Yeah, I get that if we're just considering De'Aaron now like a potential shooter. I'm not quite there yet, necessarily.
Oh, neither am I. I'm arguing from their standpoint.
But, like, can they really even, if they're being real with it, like, you can be high on your guys and still be real with it in terms of what your player skills and strengths and weaknesses are, right? It's a concern pairing Luka Doncic with De'Aaron Fox from a spacing perspective, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Luka's going to space, though. I do think that he's going to shoot the ball off the ball. And if they're viewing, De'Aaron as their point guard and Luka as more of a wing type, which is definitely possible for them, I think that's fine overall. And how they're going to use their offense, they run a lot of horn sets again. Who knows what their offense is going to be moving forward? I don't think the fit is ideal, but I don't think it's it's not crippling to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. If I was them and Doncic was on the board at 2, I would just take him and be happy. I was getting a really, really good player who I've already kind of built in a structure with which he should be able to succeed and, kind of move into the United States a little bit easier, given that Bogdan's already there, given that Vlade and Peja are running that front office now. The Kings really do have it set up for him to be successful. If Doncic was to go number 1, I would imagine you would take DeAndre Ayton, right?
The Kings definitely would. I think he's the clear guy. I think these guys are both 1-2. The only guy I can see threatening maybe is Bagley a little bit if he has great workouts and people just fall in love with the athleticism. He's kind of the dark horse, I guess, if you can call him that, for number 2. But I do think that they take Ayton. I mean, they have no real. This is another point about their roster. One you were kind of, you were making before was that they don't really have any franchise pillars. They don't have a Joel Embiid, a Ben Simmons. Like, they can be high on their own prospects. I think that there is reason for optimism with with the guys they have, but they have nobody you really draft around, as I would say. So yeah, I think that Ayton would be fine. I mean, their history developing bigs isn't great, just being frank, but I mean, Ayton is definitely the best big prospect that they would have had to work with. So I think he's kind of in a different class there.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is this in regard to the Kings. I actually think they have quite a few starting quality potential players, right? You look at Buddy Hield, you look at Bogdan, you look at De'Aaron Fox. There are a few other guys on that roster who I think could eventually develop into that potentially. Having said that, if I'm them, I'm just taking best player available and being happy. Like, I'm saying, hey, I know that Willie Cauley-Stein, maybe he made a few strides this year. Maybe he became a bit more comfortable as an offensive player in the way that we needed him to. But if DeAndre Ayton's the guy on the board, we got to take him. And the same goes with Luka Doncic. Like, Luka Doncic is on the board. Yeah, we have Buddy Hield. Yeah, we have Bogdan. There isn't a great need there necessarily. I'm just taking the guy that I think is going to be the best player to get me to that next level.
100%. And I think it's dangerous to think in terms of team fit. You have to factor it in, can you optimize this guy? Do you have the resources? But if you're drafting around players that you shouldn't be drafting around and not taking the best talent available, that can burn you. And I think for the most part, NBA teams do a pretty good job at that at the very top of the draft. They're taking mostly the high upside guys. But if you start drafting for team fit in that circumstance, I think you can get into trouble real quick.
What I would say is that I don't necessarily always agree with that strategy. I'm someone who pretty strongly believes that fit fosters development in a pretty significant way. Having guys that work around you is really important to your development as a player within the NBA. It really helps you gain confidence and puts you in a better position to succeed. But the two guys that are going to be available here, even a Marvin Bagley, he would have the same concerns. Jaren Jackson, I think, would have the same concerns if they were talking about him. So just take the best guy at this stage. If you're Sacramento, just be happy. Is this a year where the draft starts at number 3, though?
I kind of feel that way, honestly. That was my initial reaction outside of the Kings moving up to 2 was, what the hell do the Hawks do at 3? Because this is where it starts to get dicey as far as who is even in consideration. I mean, we can make pretty strong arguments for Bagley, Jaren Jackson, Mohamed Bamba. I mean, I think this is where it deviates. 1, 2 could be different orders, but I think the 2 prospects that are going to go first in the draft are Ayton Doncic, and then the Hawks at 3, very interesting.
The Hawks at 3 are very interesting. I think that Marvin Bagley will probably be the highest guy on their board if the top 2 go the way that they go. He's very redundant with John Collins. Very, very redundant with John Collins. And especially if you do not believe either of them are going to shoot long term. Now, I'm someone who thinks Marvin Bagley will shoot it at some point. So I don't know how they feel about that, though. If they believe Marvin Bagley is going to shoot, he's probably going to be fine with John Collins regardless. Because Collins, like, kind of sneaky, was taking a couple threes by the end of the year. Made 72% of his free throws. If they took him, though, they'd be building a 2-big system, which is a bit strange in today's era, especially 2 bigs that they aren't necessarily great ball handlers. Like, Bagley can handle the ball in space, but he's a finisher more than a guy you want to be handling in space.
Exactly. And I think going back to best player available versus fit, this is why I like to rank guys in tiers. So Hawks, conceptually, they could have both Bagley, Jaren Jackson available. If they have those guys in the same tier, and then you start to look at Jaren Jackson as potentially the better fit that they can optimize as kind of a unicorn big, can defend on both levels, can shoot threes, can handle a little bit.
But it's the same boat, right, though? Like, it's the same boat with Marvin Bagley there. Like, even though Jaren can shoot and maybe fits a little bit better defensively, you're still building around 2 bigs if you're doing that, and 2 bigs that definitely can't handle the ball whenever you're talking about Jaren Jackson in the open floor.
Oh, I think that Jaren Jackson can actually handle it pretty underratedly. I think he has some coordination there, but I do get your point. But the thing with Jaren Jackson, you
definitely don't want him handling the ball like in the open floor, though. You don't want him leading your break. Like, he might be able to do some stuff attacking closeouts, but he's like not a great decision maker at this stage of his career. He turns it over a decent amount and doesn't really pass it. That's fair.
The passing element and decision making is clear. I think that he can grab and go a little bit, but yeah, you're not revolving your offense around that clearly as far as his decision making. But at least I just view Jackson as a better shooter than Bagley, like a much better bet to shoot. Maybe that's unfair because some people have concerns about the mechanics, but I've seen enough from him where it's at least you're not running a 2-big system with him as far as both guys being unable to space the floor. I think that you can count on Jackson somewhat reliably to shoot threes, even right away. He's taken a lot of NBA distance threes this year, so he's a better fit in that capacity and that very specific spacing element. If they want to unleash John Collins as like the play finisher and pick and roll, like Jackson can, space to the corner, open up, lanes to dive for Collins, and maybe Bagley can do that too. I'm not as high on the shooting, but it's within his realm of outcomes. For me, it just comes down to if those guys are in the same tier for you, you can kind of side with Jaren Jackson. If they have Bagley as the clear top guy on their board and they don't feel like they have a foundational piece, take Marvin Bagley.
Yeah, is there anyone else that you think should be in this conversation? Should Mohamed Bamba get into this conversation? Should one of the guards? I think that they are relatively high on, like, Trae Young, for instance. Like, should Trae Young be in this conversation?
I mean, I think so personally. As far as if he actually gets in it is a whole different story. I mean, I think they would probably, if they took Trae Young, just with how the board broke, they might trade down a few spots. I think the value of the pick is what other people consider the value of that pick too, as far as trade capital as well. But yeah, I think that there are going to be a plethora of guys, that are in contention for this pick. We saw Bamba improve his shooting mechanics, like the video that Draft Express put out. Completely different shot. If he can shoot the ball and you have him into workouts and you feel pretty good about that, I think he has an argument there too.
Yeah, we're a pro Drew Hanlon podcast. Drew is very good. But yeah, his shooting does look very good right now. The key for him is going to be putting on lower body strength and continuing to fill out his frame. If he does that, I think that he has a ceiling that is comparable with anyone in this draft class. But, in Atlanta's case, if I'm Atlanta, I mean, I'm higher on Marvin Bagley than you. I would probably just take Marvin Bagley.
Yep, I think that's fair.
You would take Jaren Jackson, I assume?
I would. Yeah, he'd be pretty clearly the guy for me. I think that'd be a great spot for him too.
So Memphis ends up dropping from number 2 to number 4. Memphis wanted, it was kind of an open secret that Memphis was super high on Luka Doncic throughout NBA circles. Like, they really, really liked him. they end up kind of falling out of that Luka Doncic sweepstakes, it seems like, as they are, they're not in a great spot here, I think. They're probably the team that maybe lost the most from this NBA draft lottery. Like, the Hawks moved up a little bit, so it's hard to say they lost. The Kings moved up a little bit. They were a clear winner. Phoenix is a clear winner. Dallas dropping to 5. Dallas's needs are in the front court anyway, so they're going to be left with a very good center, basically regardless of what happens here, be it Jaren Jackson, be it be it Marvin Bagley if he would fall to 5. Memphis, to me, seems like the real loser here. What should they do with having Mike Conley and Marc Gasol as the pillars of this franchise currently? I think that what this pick has to be is it has to be in conjunction with their overall vision for what they see for those two players going forward more than anything.
That's a very interesting point. This is like the hardest spot in the draft, not in terms of what they'll do, but like how factoring in the actual trajectory of the team, because they do have more established veterans. This is a really nice fit for Marvin Bagley, man. I love this fit for him, playing next to Marc Gasol as a spacing threat. He can kind of be the play finisher. Mike Conley is the best point guard by a mile in this range. I think he can really optimize Bagley. So looking at it from a pure fit, I don't think they suffer a ton here unless, like you said, Marvin Bagley goes 3 to Atlanta, which is entirely possible. But if it does break that way in Bagley, I'm definitely lower on Bagley than you are, but this is like one of the destinations where I'd have to think twice about it and be like, yeah, he's going to be really, really good here.
Yeah, I think Bagley would be a home run for Memphis if he got to number 4. I would happily run to the podium if I was them. How do we think Jaren Jackson would fit in Memphis? Because he and Mohamed Bamba, and I would really say, like, I guess Michael Porter could maybe get into that conversation too. Like, how do we kind of judge those 3 against each other at number 4?
Very interesting. I think that Jackson probably can play sooner than Bamba as far as on the trajectory. I think that he physically can play in space better. He moves better than Bamba does. And again, I trust his shot more at this juncture. So I think he's going to be able to find the floor. I think that Bamba is more of a project in several respects. And with the Memphis Grizzlies timeline, he's going to give people flashbacks to Hasheem Thabeet for sure, unfortunately. But I think given Memphis's timeline, they probably want somebody who can help now. I don't know for sure if that's the case, but that just seems like a kind of player they want that could be immediately productive. And in this range, I don't know. I think that the value in this range is more for the upside outside of Jaren Jackson, who can help now. I think that it's 2 years down the road, depending on Michael Porter's injury prognosis. But if they feel good about Bamba, if he has a good workout there, and they do feel like they can develop him over time, I think that he'd be a fine pick. But I don't think he can help them enough immediately, to the extent that they'd want.
Yeah, I mean, Memphis needs to find a home for Marc Gasol.
Oh, sure.
That's where we're at in this draft process. And that's going to piss off Conley. But Mike has 3 years left at $30 million a year. He's going to have to get over it on some level. They just need to kind of move forward, I think, without Marc Gasol in the mix, because he fits with Jaren Jackson because they can both shoot the ball a little bit. But that's going to be an immobile defense by NBA standards. Jaren Jackson is mobile, but he's not a guy you want chasing modern 4s around either, I don't think. Would you agree?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. You also want to unleash Jaren Jackson's kind of attacking closeouts acumen, and I don't think that happens at the 4.
It doesn't happen at the 4, and additionally, you want part of the value out of having Jaren Jackson is being able to have 5 super mobile guys on the floor, or at least 4 super mobile guys plus Jaren Jackson, who is very, very, very mobile at 6'11". That's where you get the most value out of him, and you're just not going to get that with Marc Gasol, I don't think. So that's a tough one. I think Michael Porter should be in the mix there, to be honest, if I was them. He fits really, really well with both Mike Conley and Marc Gasol. If they're going to build around those guys going forward, I don't know if they are, though. I don't know how much I trust those two to be in the mix past next year.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it all comes down to, right? It doesn't matter too much what we think about what they should do. It's what they think they're going to do and what's best for them, and because that factors into the calculus as far as optimizing these prospects with a Bamba long-term versus more of a short-term guy. Michael is really fascinating here just because he can help them short-term as far as spacing, but do you roll the dice? You have to feel real good about his medical. Do they even get access to the medical is another question, but you really have to feel good because I still think there's high upside guys on the board. Do you feel good about Michael good enough about Michael Porter's health, given the bad sample we just saw in college, to roll the dice on him here.
Yeah, I mean, the sample in college doesn't really worry me about Porter. Is, you and I have talked about this a little bit here and there throughout the year, but like the bad sample with Porter doesn't really scare me just because he's been seen by so many executives over the course of his career. Like he's been at Nike Basketball Academy, Adidas Nations, Nike Hoop Summit, McDonald's All-America. He's been to so many Team USA events. Like this is a guy that scouts know. Like the 2 games that he played at the end of the year for Missouri, I don't think that's going to like sway them in a big way. I think that the back is what's going to sway them, and then what they hear in terms of his personality and everything, because there are rumors out there he wasn't like the best teammate at Missouri. So like that's the stuff that I think is going to play into his stock. And if you get good reports on that, I'd take him at 4 potentially. Like I don't know if I'd take him over Jaren Jackson. I think that it would be a tougher conversation in conjunction with what I could get for Marc Gasol this summer, but he'd at least be in the mix there. I think he would be one of the top 3 guys for me in the mix there.
And I think he deserves to be if the health checks out. I don't put too much weight in that sample that he showed in college. I don't think it definitely wasn't a positive. It was only a negative. I don't know how crippling it's going to be, but he didn't really address any of the field concerns in those games. It wasn't just the mobility as far as looking stiffer. That was understandable. I mean, he didn't have explosiveness. He couldn't even dunk in the open court. Like he had no bounce. He had no legs. But I think the field concerns, taking bad shots, it didn't do him any justice, because those are things we wanted to see this year, right? We want to see his tight space handle. Could he, play pick and roll? Could he pass? Because we haven't really seen too much of that at lower levels. At least I haven't, as far as watching him in high school. So I think there's definitely questions to his game, not just medically related. Like I believe in the shot. I think that at 6'10", he can shoot over the top, he can shoot off movement. But there's some definite concerns with his game that are outside the scope of just medical.
I think that's a fair point, but let's move on. Dallas is an easy spot. They take whatever big falls, right?
That's where I am. I mean, they're not taking Trae Young because they just took Dennis Smith. This is a Bamba destination. If Jackson falls here, I think this is a Jackson destination. I don't see Bagley falling this far, but he's another guy. I just think they take one of the high pedigree bigs. Yeah,
like this is a very simple spot. Whichever of those 3 falls, Bagley, Jackson, Bamba, I think that makes sense. Do you think that there's one they should want to fall more than the others?
It's really fascinating. I'm just personally higher on Jaren Jackson. I think that pairing him in a pick and roll with Dennis Smith, if you can really, if you have a gravitational floor spacer, let's say give Jaren Jackson a reasonably optimistic outcome on his shooting, and he has some gravity, then you open up the lane for Dennis Smith that can play 5 out. I think that is the most alluring to me, especially because Jaren Jackson can also cover for Dennis Smith on the other side of the floor defensively. But I think all these guys fit to an extent. Like Bagley would be awesome in Carlisle's kind of pick and roll scheme. We've seen guys like Brandon Knight in the past just kill in that role, and Bagley's definitely well equipped to be a dominant kind of 5. And I think that Carlisle would utilize Bagley more as a 5, which I kind of worry about with some other teams, and they're going to optimize him there too. Bamba, again, if he can shoot, he'll be valuable in that role as well. So yeah, I think that all these guys, Dallas doesn't have bigs. I mean, their roster is very skewed towards perimeter players. They need more bigs, so all these guys are pretty decent fits here.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like the Bagley fit quite a bit. If he was to fall to number 5, I think that he would just make a lot of sense for them in terms of the way that I know he would operate in the pick and roll with Dennis Smith. They would have easily the most athletic pick and roll combination in the NBA, right?
Yep. Like, they're definitely up there.
Like that would be a pretty big, pretty tough thing to defend for NBA teams, I would say. So at number 6, Orlando just takes Trae Young or whichever point guard they value more among him and Colin Sexton, correct?
Man, I don't know. I was thinking about this last night because I was trying to figure out where Trae Young would go if things fell kind of how we expected. And Hammond as their GM, like those guys, they're like size, length, physical tools drafters kind of. I mean, we saw Giannis, like that kind of player. I'm not sure if they're going to be totally allured. Like as far as team fit, I think we're on the same page as far as they need an initiator who can shoot the ball. They need shooting everywhere. But are they going to roll the dice on, let's say Bamba falls here. I could absolutely see them taking Bamba over Trae Young. What about you?
I do. I think that they could definitely do that, but the thing that they also value is super high character kids. And
Okay.
Trae Young is definitely like super, super high character. He's going to work hard. He's going to do the right things. Like, he's going to not be someone you have to worry about off the floor. I think that will help him. I liked the fact that, Adrian Wojnarowski reported something that I think I said on this podcast maybe a couple weeks ago about Trae Young, that he's working with Travell Gaines, I believe, as a trainer, and has already put on quite a bit of weight. I don't remember. Did I tell you that, or did I say this on this podcast?
I don't think you told me this. That's good information. I was actually trying to find that on Twitter the other day.
Yeah, no, he's working with trainers out here. He's really trying to add weight before he moves forward into the NBA. Woj said he's added 11 pounds already. He's up to 183 pounds. That's a really good sign. That's something he needs, because what scares me with Trae is that he's going to get headhunted defensively, and he needs to be able to finish offensively. Those are two skills that he has to have. That's one skill he needs to work on, is not getting headhunted consistently defensively. And then another skill that he needs to add to his toolbox is the ability to finish defensively, or finish at the rim. What a mess.
Both very valid. Both very valid concerns. I mean, we've talked about Trae Young in the past ad nauseum as far as all his weaknesses. The strength is huge. Like, if he can, it's not just strength, it's also playing with more physicality. Like, even Steph gets headhunted. You saw what Houston was trying to do to him, but he fights his ass off on these switches, and he tries to, hard hedge. It's going to come down to me is how tough is Trae Young physically, because so much of last year was, I'm just going to stay off the ball. I'm going to hide because I don't want to foul, because the offense just goes off the tracks when I get in foul trouble. We didn't get to see the full Trae Young, I don't think, in the way that we're going to at the next level. So I don't need to be talked into Trae Young at 6. I mean, I'm on board with you. If that's the pick, I think it's a great pick. But I do think that we have to consider that, given the GM past and how they kind of draft, I would not be surprised at all if Bamba here, because I think a lot of people are just treating this as Trae Young 100%, and I don't feel that way.
Who else do we need to consider here other than him? Like, we probably have to consider Michael Porter, although they just took Jonathan Isaac last year and then have a decision to make with Aaron Gordon this summer, right? Like, do we have to worry about that?
Yes, I think that it's possible. Michael Porter, I think him, Trae Young, Mo Bamba, any other bigs that we've talked about that fall, I think that's probably the conversation. I can't see them taking either the Bridges. I love Wendell Carter, but I don't see them going with him at 6. So I do think Michael Porter, Trae Young, Mo Bamba would be the 3 guys that I would think they would lean towards.
The Bulls at number 7 are also pretty interesting to me, because this seems just like a tailor-made spot for Mikal Bridges. Like, if I was them, I'd probably just take Mikal Bridges and get a starting wing. But that would be a little bit of a reach. Like, Mikal Bridges is a very good player, but he's not like your typical number 7 overall pick value-wise, I don't think. Exactly right. I think it's going to be more of a pedigree guy. And let's say Trae Young goes 6. If Michael Porter's still on the board, this is where I think maybe his floor is, depending on the medical. Maybe Cleveland the next pick. I think Porter doesn't fall anywhere past 8, though, and I could easily see him going to the Bulls. I think Porter is more of a big than he is a wing. And so I get what your thought process was with Mikal Bridges. I think that Porter is a 4-5. He's a small ball 5 in the playoffs potentially, but mostly as a 4. You worry about, I think the Bulls are at a point where they can factor in Lauri Markkanen into the calculus. I mean, they certainly definitely
are, but I think, but even for me, like, I wasn't like huge marketing guy, but he was really, really effective rookie. I like him a lot. So I think that building around him, can you put him and Michael Porter on the floor together defensively? Is there enough toughness, enough rebounding there? There's definitely enough spacing. So that's kind of an interesting element.
Yeah, like, the idea of Michael Porter and Lauri Markkanen together in a Fred Hoiberg spaced out offense, because we kind of saw the makings of that this year with Chicago. Like, Fred Hoiberg got a lot of shit the first couple years. I thought he was actually okay this year. Like, I thought he did an okay job as a coach. So that interests me a lot. But if I'm them, I'm just taking a wing and being happy. Like, that's where I'm going. Like, unless you think Colin Sexton is just such a killer that you're willing to move on from Chris Dunn. Like, that, Chris Dunn is a guy that you traded Jimmy Butler for, and is a significant part of your calculus because of that. But can they get away with kind of moving on from Chris Dunn so quickly just because they have gotten so much back from Markkanen already that he can be the guy that they got for Jimmy Butler?
That's a great point. I don't know. I don't think so. Probably. It's unlikely they're going to take another point guard, especially one that's defensively deficient, because they have Zach LaVine, who's another cornerstone guy, and he can't defend anybody. So that's a tough sell in the backcourt.
Well,
I think this is.
I'm saying Sexton, though. I'm not saying Trae Young.
Yeah, I don't think Sexton's good defensively either. But I mean, he could be, I guess. In time, he has the athleticism. I don't think he's much. I think he just tries really hard, so it looks like he's okay at times, but he's not very effective. But yeah, I think that. Sure. I mean, Sexton makes some sense here. I think another name to watch here as well is Wendell Carter, because of the cerebralness. Pairing him in Hoiberg's offense, I think he can fit next to Lowry. Again, the foot speed defensively, I think that Carter's actually underrated as far as his agility, but he's not like great by any means. He's not like a switch defender guy. But as far as his passing and ability to space the floor, play make, I think that might be more alluring to Hoiberg and the Bulls than probably is getting credit for.
So you're playing Wendell Carter and Lauri Markkanen together? Like that's going to be real hard to have a top 15 defense.
I agree. But you could have an outstanding offense. I think that's the key. But I don't know if there's a guy like Mo Bamba. Sure, if he fell to 7, I think that you can easily see him pairing next to Lauri Markkanen and just cover up for everybody defensively if he meets his ceiling outcome. But as far as the players likely to be here, I don't think Michael Porter is really helping your defense a lot. It's tough. I think this is an interesting spot, another pivot point in the draft. Yeah,
I think this is a big pivot point. I agree with you. If I was them, it would come down to Bridges or Porter for me. Our second sponsor today is Hims. We have a problem as men, and, Hims is here to solve it for you. 66% of men lose their hair by age 35, but the thing is, when you start to notice hair loss, it's too late. You don't want to end up looking like me, where your forehead takes up half your face and you have your hairline going backwards every year. It's easier to keep the hair you have than it is to replace the hair you've lost. If that hairline is slowly starting to move backwards, or if you have any bald spots, just think about how you're going to feel a year from now if you don't take care of it now. Guys, sometimes they turn to weird solutions when they can instead actually turn to medicine and science, and that's what Hims is here for. It's a one-stop shop for hair loss, skincare, sexual wellness. It's for men, and thanks to the science at forhims.com, baldness can be optional. It connects you with real doctors and medical-grade solutions to treat hair loss, well-known generic equivalents to name-brand prescriptions that help you keep your hair. This is not snake oil pills. This isn't gas station counter supplements. It is prescription solutions backed by science. There's no waiting room. There's no awkward doctor visits where you have to, think and get inside your head and be like, oh, is someone going to notice me here? It's just so easy. You answer a few questions and a doctor is going to review and prescribe it for you. This is something that, again, it's a fantastic product, and I can't emphasize enough. This is something I personally endorse. If you order now, my listeners are going to get a trial month of Hims for just $5 right now while supplies last. See the website for details. This would cost hundreds of dollars if you went to a doctor or a pharmacy. Go to forhims.com/game theory. That's forhims.com, forhims.com/game theory, GAMETHEORY, forhims.com/game theory today to take advantage of this great offer. The Cavs at number 8. This is either the start of their rebuild or an incredibly large luxury for them. And the big key for the Cavs is going to be figuring out in some way what LeBron is going to do, like having some indication what he is going to be going forward for them. Is he moving on, or is he staying in Cleveland? No answers there yet. I think anyone who's saying they know is probably lying, unless they have people in LeBron's inner circle. If I'm Cleveland, I'd probably just take the best player available, right? The guy with the highest upside.
Yes, that's how I would operate, especially if the best player available. I would just do that anyway, like you noted, but especially if the best player available can help both circumstances. So if LeBron leaves, you need a guy. You need a perimeter creator type who can, initiate your offense. Trae Young makes a lot of sense if he's still on the board, because I think he can play off LeBron too as a shooter. Of course, the defensive concerns are very real with him, but that's an interesting fit. And I don't know, Mikal Bridges would also, he fits more if LeBron stays because he can help immediately on the wing. But if he leaves, Mikal Bridges can't be one of the 3 best players on a title team likely. So that gets a little dicier. Yeah.
If I'm them, I'd take a pretty serious look at Colin Sexton too.
Okay.
They just need a point guard badly. George Hill's fine, but you can play George Hill on or off balls. We've seen they need someone who can create offense for them in a substantial way beyond LeBron James. And I know that Colin Sexton is not a great shooter yet, which would make it a bit of a finicky, kind of fit with LeBron. but he's just so competitive that I think LeBron would love him. Like, even though he wouldn't be the kind of traditional playmaker that has succeeded with a LeBron James in the past in terms of spacing the floor, the competitiveness levels, I think, would just really, really help. Plus, he's athletic. He can get to the rim. Kind of a much, much better version of what they hoped they were getting in Jordan Clarkson.
That's interesting. It's funny with Sexton because like I'm lower on him as a prospect than you are, but like the best thing that you can say about him is he's competitive and like his mindset, and you can't write him off because of that, right? I mean, he does compete at such a high level, and he's so intense that he's a guy that I think could probably improve over time. So conceptually, I think there's a lot of fit issues with LeBron as far as having that kind of player next to him. I'm not sure if I want Colin Sexton as like my point guard of the future, but I guess I can't really disagree with how you approach this.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of Colin Sexton and fitting with someone in the future, I think he would fit really well at New York at number 9. Like that just makes a lot of sense to me. Pairing him with a guy like Frank Ntilikina, who we feel pretty good about being a spot shooter as well as a very, very strong defender, that would give them multiple ball handling options to play pick and roll with Kristaps. Like that stuff makes a lot of sense to me.
Absolutely. This kind of feels like either it's probably going to be a perimeter player. They're not going to take a center to pair next to Porzingis, I don't think. So Mikal Bridges is another guy. I think we've talked about this in the past. Putting him and Ntilikina on the wing just gives you a lot of versatility. It gives you switchability, and also it's a nice nice ingredient to attract maybe a free agent. In free agency as a high-profile guy, because those guys fit really easily next to stars. So I think this is probably a wing. If Trae Young falls to 9, do you think they even entertain it?
If Trae Young falls to 9, I would take him.
Okay.
I would just take him. He is good enough to take it number 9, and I love the idea of him playing pick and roll with Kristaps Porzingis. Just do it.
Oh, I would probably die. That would be incredible. So I'm very much in on this plan.
Yeah. If Trae was there at number 9, I would take him. If Porter was there, I would take him. I think Mikal Bridges should be in the mix. I think Miles Bridges should be in the mix. We're starting to get into Shai Alexander territory too, for me.
Yes.
I'm very high on Shai, and we can talk about Shai at number 10. I think that Mikal Bridges is like far and away the guy that they should want to fall to number 10. If I was Philly, I would consider packaging 10 and 26 to try and move up like to number 8 or something like that. See if Cleveland is willing to, take on a couple of guys to, maybe rebuild out their roster. If they got indications LeBron was going to leave, I would maybe try and offer like 8-26 and another pick maybe. Or I'm sorry, 10-26 and a number pick for number 8. Bridges to me is just the obvious fit here. I will say if Bridges is off the board, I am a big fan of Shai Alexander here too.
And I think 2 other names you could see entertained here, Miles Bridges, and I think this is going to really piss you off, but we're starting to get into Zaire Smith territory too with the buzz he's getting. Like
Sure.
I would not be shocked if he went 10. I think this is where I can start seeing him off the board. I don't see him going higher than 10. I don't think New York with the players they have on the board are going to take Zaire Smith, but it would not shock me if Zaire Smith went 10.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not there yet. We do like Zaire Smith. Not as much as Cole. Like, I like Zaire, but Cole's losing his mind over there. Yeah, for me, the 2 guys here, Mikal Bridges or Shai Alexander. Just make it simple, because I'd be surprised if both of those guys were gone, the way the board looks right now.
That's fair. And just really quick as a tangent with the board, if Wendell Carter doesn't go to Chicago or Cleveland at 7 and 8, I could see him falling a little bit in this draft. Like, it's not conceivable that he would fall to 12th to the Clippers or something. I don't think he makes it past both the Clippers picks, but if the Hornets pass him, I think he could easily fall to 12, 13. I think that'd be an awesome value.
Well, here's what I'd say about Carter. He makes sense, I think, at number 7. He makes sense at number... I don't know if he makes sense for the Cavs unless they just decide to move Kevin Love and like LeBron leaves. You know what I mean? Number 9, yes. The Knicks. I mean, if Fizdale wants to play Kevin Love or wants to play Kristaps Porzingis a bit at the 4 to take the pressure off of his body, like maybe that's a fit there. The 76ers, like if they want very real insurance for Joel Embiid, I think that would not be the craziest decision. The Hornets, they probably can't take him. It would probably be malpractice actually to take him. But yeah, the Clippers at 12 and 13, I think are the soft landing spot.
I agree. I think that's the right way to look at it. I think the Bulls Honestly, I think your point about the Cavs is spot on. I would be surprised if they take him. I would be shocked if the Sixers took him, even for Joel Embiid insurance, just given what we just saw and like the progress that team's already made. So they need to take a wing. They need somebody who can shoot and guard. But if Mikal Bridges isn't there, I guess it wouldn't be stunning to me. But I still think they would aim for like a Miles Bridges or like a Zaire Smith or a Shea Alexander. I think it's going to be a perimeter player.
I would still just take Shea. Let's not get that twisted. Like I'm someone like if I was like drafting, I would have Carter on the board for the Clippers. Like I'm not quite as high on him as the rest of the league is and as you are. I am a little bit more worried about the foot speed than I think most people around the league are. Having said that, like he is a very, very skilled player, and I think that his ability to fit into an offensive role really is going to help him. And he's an underrated shot blocker too. I think like that's going to help him.
What the hell do you think the Hornets do at 11?
They're going to take Miles Bridges. If Miles Bridges is there, he's going 11. Like that ownership group, that team, they love super productive players. Miles Bridges is a super productive player. Like he is going to be able to come in. He fits with Kemba Walker. He fits with everyone else on their roster. Basically, this is just a tailor-made fit to me.
Yeah, that's where I would lean to. It's hard for me to figure out the Hornets overall, just because they're another weird trajectory. Of course, Mitch Kupchak in charge now. We'll see kind of what direction they go, but I could easily see Miles Bridges here.
And you know what? I would consider Shea Alexander if I was them. Like I will probably have Shea Alexander ahead of Miles Bridges on my final board, and I would probably take Shea Alexander if I was them, and I would take him over Bridges because I like the fit next to Kemba Walker, and I like the idea of him as Kemba Walker insurance if Walker was to leave. But I think that they're going to take Bridges if he's on the board.
And I also like Shea Alexander's fit next to Malik Monk moving forward. It's someone you can let Monk guard point guards, and Shea could play. He could guard bigger twos. That's kind of one of the problems that you have with Monk is like who does he guard? Shea had to actually be a really nice fit for him long term.
You know what? I think I'm like being sold on this. Like maybe, but when I opened my mouth before we started talking about Shea Alexander to the Hornets, I just kind of started talking and like started like talking about why he would be a fit. But yeah, I actually dig that. Like maybe they would take Shea over Bridges.
This is my favorite Shea destination now after conversing with you. I think that it optimizes him, it optimizes Monk, and I just want Monk to be optimized too. So this is selfishly, Shea would be good here.
The Clippers at number 12 and number 13, they're just taking upside. Whatever guys are there, they're just going to take them. For me, that's Shea Alexander and Kevin Knox. I think Robert Williams is going to get in the mix. If Wendell Carter fell, he'd be in the mix. Lonnie Walker is going to be in the mix. Zaire Smith, I'll throw him into the mix for you, Cole. Don't worry.
There we go.
I'd even have like Troy Brown around here potentially too. So like that's where I'm at.
And I also think this is the soft landing for Colin Sexton. Is that fair?
Yes.
If he falls a little bit in the draft, I don't know if he makes it past 12 and 13. And if he does make it this far, I think you can see if the Clippers aren't enamored with him, maybe you see them trade the pick, because as far as draft pick value, I think Sexton, if he falls, is probably going to have the most as far as especially trade value. But if the Clippers value him highly, I think he doesn't fall past 13.
Denver at number 14.
I got nothing.
I think there are two fits.
This is another sneaky Zaire Smith. I think this is a sneaky Zaire Smith again. But it's tough because they have so many, like, what they need is like an OG type who can be like a combo forward type and defend those guys. They have a backcourt that's established. Gary Harris, Jamal Murray, of course. So playing 3, 6, 5 or shorter guys, I'm not sure if that's the right approach. But they don't really have. There's not really a guy in this class that gives them exactly what they need. This is something that maybe they're just drafting the best available player.
Right, like I love the idea of Kevin Knox for them positionally because of that, but Kevin Knox needs to prove that he can defend and be like fluid with his hips and move up and down the lineup. Robert Williams, I think, is interesting here. Very, very athletic guy to pair with Nikola Jokic potentially in the same lineup, but probably more as a backup change of pace guy if you need to take Jokic off the floor occasionally. That's an interesting one to me, but if I'm thinking Denver, I'm probably thinking Kevin Knox here.
He makes the most conceptual sense if you believe in what his strengths are supposed to be as far as shooting, which I do believe in the shooting. Defensively, I'm not sure if the IQ's there. They have Trey Lyles, who kind of fits a similar role, not precisely the same player, but kind of that archetype. But yeah, Denver's a tough one for me just because I don't see a guy right now like Robert Williams. Like you can play him next to Jokic. We've seen like non-spacing bigs play next to Jokic before, like Kenneth Faried, for example. I don't know if that's the optimal way to use him, and I'm not sure if Robert Williams is good enough off-ball defensively to really gain his full value as a non-spacing threat offset on the other end. This is a tough spot, though. Kevin Knox, for what you noted, makes some sense because he is a combo forward who can shoot. I'm not super high on Kevin Knox, so I don't know if I'd like the pick necessarily, but I don't see a lot of clear-cut options unless like a Miles Bridges somehow falls this far.
Oh, if Bridges fell this far, I think 14 should be his soft landing spot, right?
Yes.
Because that would be a perfect tailor-made fit for what Denver does.
And I don't think that's entirely impossible. I think that I bet against it, but this is another one of those soft landings where if Bridges is here, I think he's easily the pick.
I agree with you. Another sneaky name that I'm going to throw in is Jonan Musa. Kid from Croatia, or kid from Bosnia. I'm sorry, he's not from Croatia. Good Lord. Plays for Cedevita over in the Adriatic League. Is a very, very good scorer in Denver with Arturas Karnisovas. Really scouts overseas as well as any team in the entire NBA. They will be very familiar with Jonan Musa's game in a way that most other teams won't be.
Yeah, it's a great point. I got to go watch him. I haven't watched too many of the internationals outside of Luka, so that's on the agenda for me.
Yeah, Musa's a very, very good scorer, 3-level scorer, sneakier passer than what I think he gets credit for, especially in the half court. He's very good at passing on the move. Big question for him is athleticism and ability to gain separation. He's also had some immature moments, I would say, is a big thing for him.
What is he defensively as far as a prospect? Does he have any kind of upside on that end, outside positional size?
I think he's like a worse Dario Saric defensively. Like Dario at least battles on that end and fights and can be useful just due to his size occasionally. I don't think Moose is quite the rebounder that he is. I don't think that Saric is. I don't think that he battles as much as Dario does. And I think like that's the reason Dario went number 12 and Musa, if he falls beyond Denver, probably goes more like, 18 to 24.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Let's talk a little bit about the Combine. Is there anything that you're looking forward to with the NBA Draft Combine here?
Zaire Smith's no-step vertical. Got to stay true to brand here, man.
Yeah.
Of course, the measurements, that's the first thing everybody wants to look for is the wingspan measurements. So, like, what Jonte Porter's wingspan is. I'm sure I'm going to hear about that from you after it gets released. Landry Shamet's, that's another guy that I'm personally curious about. Marvin Bagley standing in reach. I mean, he's not going to be there, right? Is Bagley not attending? Is that correct?
Bagley is on the list right now to attend.
Oh, cool. Okay, so some standing reach. The measurements. Jacob Evans is another guy. I just want to see how long he is. For me, that's mostly what it's about because I don't know. You have more intel on this. Who's going to play 5-on-5s? Like if D'Anthony Melton is playing 5-on-5s, I would doubt it. If he does shooting drills, that's going to be another number one thing for me. So those are just off the top of my head kind of what I'm fixating on. What about you?
Yeah, I think that measurements are going to be interesting to see. Some of the measurements that I'm kind of looking forward to getting. I think Kostas Antetokounmpo, we have some of his measurements. I think he was like 6'9" with like a 7'1" wingspan when he was at Hoop Summit. He's really just kind of freakishly long, and I think he will test well athletically. Wouldn't be a surprise if he ends up kind of establishing himself as like a stash pick in the second round. Some other measurements, I'm just trying to think of the ones we don't have. Like Javon Carter is going to be interesting. I want to know how long he is in terms of wingspan. I want to know how long Bruno Fernando is. Like, is he like a 7'4" wingspan guy, 7'5" wingspan guy at 6'10"? Like, that could be a really big game changer for him. Kevin Hervey, I've been told, is like a 7'3" wingspan. I'll be interested to see what his official measurement comes in at. Shea Alexander, I've heard anywhere from 6'10" to 7-foot wingspan. That's one that will be interesting to track.
Yes.
Konate is going to be very interesting to me because I've been told that his arms aren't like hyper long, like 6'9" with like a 7-foot wingspan. If he can outperform 7-foot wingspan by any sort of measurement, and if he can get to like 6'9", 6'10" in terms of height, I think that would make teams feel a lot more confident in the shot blocking ability translating. Just trying to think of a couple of other random dudes. Josh Okogie, I think the 7-foot wingspan measurement is official, so I don't know if we need that yet. I think PJ Washington is going to test out of the gym as well. I'm going to say that. Like, I think PJ Washington, we're going to come away from the Combine thinking he was like a quote-unquote winner of the process because he did so well in the athletic testing portion and in the measurements portion.
Very realistic. I mean, he's really explosive as far as, I think, just power and leaping ability, and he could definitely test well on agility. He showed some nice stints this year on tape as far as sliding in space, so that would not surprise me at all.
What did you think of Jared Vanderbilt dropping out of the combine?
I mean, what's the driving force for that? Was it medical? I don't know.
He didn't really give a reason. For me, it made sense if he's not super sold on this. Like, if he's like 30% on, I'm going to go to the NBA draft, then like, I wouldn't want my medical testing out there before it needs to be for NBA teams.
That's the only kind of avenue I could think about from his angle, because he is a good athlete. He would test out of the gym as well as far as agility drills. He's very quick, fast too. So as far as like short agility sprints, I think that he's a good athlete. He's not a great leaper, but as far as the horizontal athleticism, he really thrives there. So it's got to be something else. Maybe he's just not totally hell bent on coming into the draft. I don't know. It seems to me though that it's medical. It's medically related.
Yeah, another guy that I'm very interested in is Anthony Simons. I would imagine he's not going to play at the combine, and I would imagine that we're not going to like gain a lot of whole new information, but it'll be nice to get measurements, see if he comes in at like 6'10" wingspan at 6'4", to learn a little bit more about what his quick twitch athleticism is. Does he pop that 40-inch vertical leap? Like, this stuff doesn't matter though at the end of the day. Like, the thing that is most important at the combine is the stuff that happens behind the scenes that we don't necessarily get access to. For people who like aren't super initiated with this, I would say if I was ranking things that matter, of the things that happen at the NBA Combine, number one would be medical reports, just full stop. They do like full battery of medical tests to, look at both your short-term and long-term health. And it's very important that guys pass that in at least a solid way. Like if it like says like, oh yeah, in like 15 years he's going to have bad knees. It's like, okay, that's, something you don't want to see, but it's not the biggest deal in the world. If it says like in 5 years you're going to have bad knees, that's a problem for you. Or if it says, this guy needs to have knee surgery now to correct a future problem down the road, that's where stuff can get problematic. Number two, I would say, is interviews and going through talking with NBA teams. That can be an incredibly important thing, just so that teams can get to know you a little bit better. They can decide if they want to bring you out to their facility. They can decide, we don't want anything to do with this guy. We've heard some of the issues that he's had in the past in interviews, and, we wanted to interview him ourselves, and it's just been a problem. It doesn't seem like the kind of guy that'll fit in our culture. Number three, I would say, is probably measurements or athletic testing, just like something in there. Number five is 5-on-5, probably. Like, some teams value the 5-on-5 a little bit, but if you've ever sat in that gym for the last 5 years during 5-on-5 games, it's hard to take them seriously. It's really hard to take them seriously.
Yeah, the only thing I can really add, I agree with all that, by the way. I think that medical is the clear number one. But as far as specific takeaways, sometimes most guys will continue to work on their game postseason, and sometimes they're like the tweaks are evident. Like Kyle Kuzma made a couple of mechanical tweaks to his shot, and he really shot well at the combine, and I didn't give that enough credit last year. You don't want to buy in too much to small samples, but that's just something to be cognizant of, is these guys are continuing to work on their games. And if you see anything you haven't seen in the past manifest on the floor, who's playing 5-on-5, even in drills, for example, it rarely happens, but it's just something to be cognizant of, I guess.
Yeah, that's a really fair point. These athletic testing, you don't take them at face value, because different guys apply their athleticism in different ways on the floor. And this is something that you and I have talked about all season with Hamidou Diallo versus Zaire Smith, right? Like, Hamidou Diallo, because he can't handle the ball, because he doesn't always try as hard as he should defensively, and because his instincts aren't always great defensively, his athletic tools don't play up in the way that they should. Zaire Smith, because he's just giving effort constantly and because he has really good defensive instincts, those tools do tend to play up athletically, and that stuff does really help him in terms of his athleticism. Melvin Frazier is another guy that is super athletic and plays at a super athletic. He applies that athleticism to a high level on the floor. So those are just kind of small examples of what we're talking about whenever we say applied athleticism, because I'm sure that that's a phrase that we'll say over the course of the next little while.
Yeah, I usually use functional athleticism, but precisely spot on as far as that goes. You want to see how the athleticism applies to the floor. You can't, I know some tests do this. I know combine agility drill is not going to test this, but they do have some tests that test reaction time. So how quickly you respond to something in a drill. In the game, that's what matters a lot, is just how quickly do you react. It doesn't matter if you can run and jump out of the gym. If you're slow to diagnose plays, both mentally and then react physically, instincts-wise, your athleticism is not getting maximized. So I look at the lane agility drills, I look at the sprints, I look at that stuff, but mostly you've seen these guys on the floor, and that's what matters.
Yeah, no, of course. Like, even team workouts to an extent, I guess, matter, but all of the scouting has already been done and is going to be done in terms of the tape, right? Like, yes. Everything you watch on tape is going to be what matters. So, I don't know. That's where I'm at on this. Cole, do you have anything else you want to talk about with the Combine in terms of just what you're looking at and what you're looking forward to seeing?
Again, I've already voiced this, but if DeAnthony Melton shoots at all, if they have him shooting drills, that's going to be the most fascinating thing for me, because he's a guy who's, we both really like. He's under the radar, of course, because he didn't play last season, but if he's made mechanical tweaks, there is a ton. We talk about functional athleticism. That guy has a ton of functional athleticism, super high IQ, and if he's gotten his elbow in his mechanics, like some people say he has, I think that he's like a top 20 guy. Like, I already think he's a top 20 guy in this class, but I could be convinced he's like a lottery guy in this class. I think he's that damn good. Yeah,
he's going to be a guy that analytically inclined organizations, I think, are going to take a serious look at. And teams that really value guys who play hard defensively. I think you and I are just super high on perimeter defense right now, and for good reason, given the way the NBA playoffs have played out. But like, DeAnthony Melton's an incredible perimeter defender.
Yes, he's both quick and he reacts incredibly quickly on the floor. We've already seen all his tape guarding Markelle Fultz. It's just, for me, it really just comes down to the shot, because he didn't have diversity his freshman year. He wasn't a proficient outside shooter, and with even the slightest adjustments, he's working with Hanlon too, isn't he? That's what I heard. And if he can be proficient as an outside shooter, man, I think he's going to be a draft steal.
Cole, tell the people where they can find your work.
As usual, on thestepien.com. I will actually have a piece out this week, finally. I finally have time to write. That's the skepticism I deserve right there. But it's going to be about bigs defensively in the playoffs and kind of any takeaways we can apply to the draft. So just looking at both offense, defense, emphasizing perimeter skills, space defense, stuff we've talked about on the podcast. But check that out and continue to listen to this podcast.
Follow The Athletic. I will have some good stuff from Chicago this week at the Combine. Just keep it locked here as well. I'll have another podcast on Friday in all likelihood. But until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.